Hello and welcome to the 37th video of the Project Sovereign series. In this video, I'll create the spotlights for the ship. This should be a nice change of pace, so let's get started. Okay, so now that the modeling is completed, it is time to actually light the ship. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that my exposure is set to 0, and this is so I can create a uniformity across all of my scenes, so that if I combine one ship from another scene, I don't have to recalibrate all of the lighting and the illuminated textures because that's a pain in the butt. So that's something I'd rather skip, so I set my exposure to 0. And then I can change anything else and I don't have to worry. So this looks a bit bright. I want the ship to appear as it would in deep space. So I'm just going to bring up my material editor and go to my HDRI. And I can set the output RGB level. Let me see, let's set that to 1. Still a little bit too bright. How about 0.7? There we go. That's a good starting point. Again, this is just work lighting. This probably isn't going to be used for the final renders, but it's a good place to start anyway. So now what I want to do is actually bring in a light. So since I'm using the Corona renderer, I'll be using a Corona light. And I'll bring that in. It's going to be a disk, which is good, because that will have more of a spotlight effect. So I'll just zero that out and bring it up, just kind of put it in place. And of course I can have my interactive render, and there's the light. I want to make sure, okay, good. So I want visible directly to be off. And I also want occlude other lights to be off. So that this way the light disk itself doesn't cast a shadow. That's not what we want. We want this to be an invisible light source because of course in real life, this was lit by lights that were not on the model. So it's like phantom lighting. So this is going to work out just fine. So now I just need to make some adjustments. Just tilt it. Bring down the radius. You see it's going to change the actual radius of the light because it's not going to be so huge. Bring it forward. Let's get a better view of what's going on. Lower it down. And this is a pretty good starting point. But the last step that I want to do to really help fine-tune this is I want to introduce an IAS map into this. So I'm going to explain a bit what that does. Right now, this is just a perfectly flat circle, which is emitting the light. That's not really how it works in real life. So I want to kind of create more of a light bulb sort of effect to give it more interesting shadows, umbras and penumbras and all that kind of stuff that happens in real life with lighting. So I'll just click on my IAS file here, none. And there are some that come with 3ds Max by default. So experiment with all of these if you'd like. I personally prefer the point recessed wall wash 75 watt. So I'm just going to call that one in. And you can see that drastically changes the lighting distribution. And the last thing I want to do is see how it's kind of askew right now, the photometric web distribution. I just want to change that. So I'm going to rotate it, be sure that I'm in local, which I am. Have my angle snaps on, just go 90 degrees. There we go. Bring it back a little bit. Just more playing around and stuff like that. This is, to me, what makes this phase so much fun. Bring it down. So that's going to look pretty good. Let's do a test render real quick just to see what that looks like. Expand this. So I'm going to let this run a bit, and then we'll see how this looks. And you can see what I was talking about, how we've got these nice differentiations in highlight and shadow here, making it much more of a realistic looking light source. I can turn up my filmic highlights, which I will show you. So right here, this is in Corona, filmic highlights. I can turn this up. You see it shrinks down that splotch. So I don't like to turn it up all the way usually, but just enough. So now we get a really nice delineation between light and shadow. So this is basically how spotlights are done on my ships. I'm going to do this throughout the entire ship. I'm going to do it on the saucer bottom as well as on the warp nacelles and any other spots that will need lighting. I've adjusted the saucer top light So it's a bit more toned down and closer to what you see in the movie. And I simply copied it and moved it to the saucer bottom too. And of course, I will adjust these to fit the registries if necessary. But again, this is just to get them in place and to get the ball rolling on this. I thought you'd like to see me create the lights for Shuttle Bay 1, so I will do that. Disc light, corona light. All right, and just place it where it needs to be. Something really cool about the lights being under here. It's just a detail I've always liked about this. So of course I'm going to shrink it down. Basically right there. Shrink it down even more. It's a bit much. I'm not going to bother modeling any light sockets that would be under here. It's kind of pushing it too far for the level of detail that I want to put into this model. Bring the radius down some more. And I can give it my IAS. Great, turn it around. Just like that. And finally, what I want to do is name it. So I give my lights a very specific naming convention because, again, importing these ships into other scenes can become a traffic jam when you're trying to adjust the lighting and you don't know what goes to what. So Sovereign Light and Shuttle Bay. And I'll call this starboard. Cool. All right, so now all I have to do is move it over, duplicate it and move it over. So I'll copy this, make the copy. And I want to make this an instance so I can shut them both on and off at the same time and adjust their brightness more easily. And I'll just call this port. Put it in place. Nice. So there we go. Just like you'd like to see that part of the operation. So this will be it for the spotlights for the ship. I just created all the spotlights for the warp nacelles. So as you can see, these will be for the registries. There will be a pennant here and the hull registries here and on the exteriors as well. So I want to show you why I get so into the naming conventions. You see this is Sovereign Light Nacelle Interior Port. Well, that's because when I bring up this lister, you can see everything is here nicely organized. And you'll see that I created instances so I can turn off these. And you see both exterior lights have been turned off. See that? So this has gone dark and that's gone dark. So it just makes it a lot easier to manage the scene. I could bring up the brightness if I want to do 30 to make it brighter. That's going to reflect on the opposite side. So just little touches like this can make your life a lot easier when you're trying to manage a scene, especially when you have more than one asset in the scene. So that's going to do it for today's video. I'm just going to create the spotlights. In the next video, I'll create all the propulsion lighting. So that means the Bussard collectors, the nacelle grills, the impulse engines, and the navigational deflector will be finished too. So that'll be the next video, so be sure to check that out. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I will see you soon.